Hi, I'm Jim Masters from CityLife International Church here in Sheffield. We've just again gone through our Bible school and we've had a fantastic minister called Mark Wiltshire, who's also the chairman of the Assemblies of God. And it really is a pleasure to hear what he's been teaching, especially on leadership and repositioning. And I just want to ask him a few questions I've asked everybody because we do this on our CityLife TalkTime. And it's just to get a flavour of other ministries and other obviously motivational gifts that people are just giving to our church. So Mark, let me ask you a question. What was it like going into the ministry right at the beginning of your life?
Well, obviously, so I gave my life to Christ at 17, but I was in the commercial world full time until I was 39. Right. But I was involved in local church. I was preaching occasionally, leading small groups, praying, leading prayer groups, that kind of thing. But actually, moving across from the secular marketplace to full time as a minister was a big life decision. And that might be what you're asking about.
Yeah, because Mark's very similar to me in terms of transitioning from a kind of a background of secular work and professional work. So give us some of your challenges that you found going from like the secular work into being a pastor, a full-time pastor.
Well, I suppose an overall feedback and observation is that being a pastor is actually spiritually a really challenging thing, because you're very mindful that you're caring not only for people, but you're needing to hear God, and of course the spiritual battles around leadership to do with our Christian walk. So that's a dynamic that you don't really overly think about when you're in the secular marketplace. And I was a very high level leader on a global basis with global teams in many countries, involved in a very strategic role with a number of different organizations, and so the financial implication was huge by following Christ into that call to ministry full time. And it was very different because the local church just isn't geared up like a corporate. They just don't have the skill sets on team. So we had to go through a lot of changes, literally things, operational things had to change to enable us to be able to. It was amazing, actually. It was very significant. We had to change the operational structure of the church, the financial structure of the church, to make sure we could get good visibility of how it was working. Not so that we were just constantly trying to look at the detail, but because we wanted to make sure things were safe and being done well and accountable and transparently. And because of the old approach to church being pretty relaxed and low level-ish so laid back, it's almost there was one
almost asleep.
There was a drawer at church. I opened it one day and there's a whole pile of cash in it, and the then bookkeeper had just thought, they'll just keep that for emergencies, but it's just sitting hundreds of pounds in. Anyway, but once that was sorted, we could get onto a rhythm. That was it.
Okay. Now you've got such a thriving church in Bromley, and you've mentioned about people getting baptised on a consistent basis, and obviously you're bringing people to salvation. Tell us a little bit about how you think the catalyst almost started that off. I mean, you went through a lull, and then all of a sudden, exponentially, you've gone, to a growth level.
Well, I mean, praise God, our journey over a number of years has generally been when we're in really good shape and healthy, and I've got my focus on what's going on in the church, our growth is around 30 to 35%.
Wow.
Which is both financial and people. Wow. That creates problems all of its own, because you have to create leaders, you've got to adapt service times, work on making sure discipleship's happening, more baptisms, more mess, if you like. But I would say that's a big challenge. When the pastor takes his eyes off any aspect of that leadership in the local church, the church becomes vulnerable. Not that he's got to know everything that's going on, but if there is a big reason to be distracted for any particular reason, then the church does suffer. And I think there's no question about it. Leadership is a huge place of influence, and so the senior leader will influence the team, and the team itself is not only carrying the vision but contributing to it. And so it's important, if the pastor is losing sight of why they're doing what they're doing,
very good.
Then things start to move sideways a little bit. So you've just got to be careful of that. It's not that they've got to be constantly rigorous about every detail. That's not what I'm talking about. But just being connected with the leadership team.
Overview.
Don't assume
Yeah.
it's all going well,
No,
because as soon as we assume it, that's
when it
that's
goes
the
bad.
mistakes. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay.
I mean, we've not had a horrific time, but
No.
but if you do allow assumption to take place, you find that people
yeah.
don't do what you think.
So, someone, people who are joining the ministry and going into this type of ministry, and when new people come into the church, so take me through the journey of a person coming into the church for the very first time, and then they ending up in a leadership position. What are the mechanics like? What does your church actually do?
Well, we went through a number of years where we decided we'd just be organic because we couldn't keep up with the 35% compound growth.
Right, yeah.
We're in London on the south side, and there is movement of people anyway because it's a very cosmopolitan. We're on the edge of the city, and there's lots of professionals and all sorts of people in the church. But so the reality is we've always got people coming in, and there is a degree of people moving out. So we know we're going to lose good people every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So each year, I would say we are probably seeing around 80 people move on from the church.
Okay, that's
just
good.
because they're relocating work-wise or other reasons, family-related reasons. So there's always new people coming in. So we have organised training.
Wow. Okay.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. If they're coming in for the first time and they know Christ, then we just let them get used to the church, connect to a small group, start to get into fellowship, start to serve.
Right.
If they are people seeking Christ and they're on a journey, and we get a lot of people who are not yet saved. We frequently do a salvation invitation in the church. We frequently see people come to decisions. So in for 3 Sundays, not the last 3, but 3 Sundays, we've most recent appeal Sundays, on the back of various services, 62 decisions, 64 decisions for Christ.
Wow.
And for a relatively small church, ish. I say that it's bigger than your average church, but it's still
definitely bigger.
It's that creates a challenge. So we got to disciple them, and working out how to disciple them either in a small group, or in a first steps kind of group, in a discovery group. And indeed, we also encourage people to go on one-on-one discipleship. We've got a good number of people having that one-to-one growth opportunity. And then, of course, baptism, and then growing them up through some training, structured training, into a leadership route.
So my last question is obviously about you being the chairman of Assemblies of God. Obviously, I mean, I'm saying it's obvious, but you probably correct me if I'm wrong. Running a denomination and running a church, I would assume are completely different. Or are they other components that are similar? What would you say the differentiation between the two are? Would you?
Yeah, I mean, as the chairman, it's a great honour and privilege to be the chairman of AOGGB. That's at the pleasure of the board. So the board makes that decision, and at any point they could make an alternative decision. But the board has got to work well, and the national leader, an incredible man of God, Glyn Barrett, is the UK or AOGGB national leader.
Wonderful.
And we really support Glyn. So Glyn leads the entire ministry direction of the movement, and our board's responsibility is to free that up. In a local church context, I'm driving the ministry lead, and our board is supporting that.
And you're the chairman of that board.
And I'm the chairman of that. I'm chairman of a couple of other boards as well. But they're different. They're not churches. They're more Christian ministries and mission focused. But so Assemblies of God, because it's a sizable missional ministry and movement in the UK, with hundreds and hundreds of churches. There's probably 1,000 leaders, I would guess, either linked to AOGGB or going through the system. Churches being planted all the time. So the board's role is governance, to protect the ministry,
to facilitate,
give a check and balance, to free up the ministry side of the movement. So we do get into quite a lot of detail, but when you've got so many churches, it's inevitable you're going to have some challenges. And so some of the challenges are way bigger than your average local church, and they've got a lot of technical and legal implications. So it is more demanding. It's probably the most demanding board I've been on, because it's again, people affect everything.
And such diversity as well
yeah.
of churches and people. Yeah.
But our goal as the board is to really do everything in our power to ensure that the national leader and his team just can really just do everything God wants us to do.
Freedom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent, wonderful.
So it's a serving role, really.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so grateful that Mark was here in Sheffield in CityLife International Church. We've got so much wisdom from him, and I'm sure a lot of people will want to tap in. If you're in Bromley, please go and visit his church, and I'm sure they'll be open with welcoming arms. They are a multicultural church, so they have all sorts of nationalities there. And so I'd just like to thank everybody for watching CityLife TalkTime, and stay in touch.